And we are live back again. I'm sorry, everybody. It took me a few minutes to get organized here because my preview went a little long, but honored to have Charmaine back with us. I'll introduce her in just a minute. Let me give it a couple of minutes here for people to come hop online, which we have a few folks joining us already. This is maybe the most important not maybe it is the most important conversation that we've had yet on the show. And we've got people joining us, so I appreciate that. Everyone, do me a favor before we get started, share this. We need as many people in Hamilton County to hear this extremely important conversation as possible. So if you all would be willing to share this to groups on your own page, wherever the case may be, that would be fantastic. We appreciate it, particularly in Hamilton County, but it doesn't matter. I think this discussion has national relevance at this point.
Yeah.
And that's it. So with that, as you can see, I'm a literal redneck right now. I was not planning on being out in the sun for 6 hours today. I left this morning to get coffee and didn't make it over to Black-owned to get coffee because everybody starts texting me about apparently this craziness that was going on at the jail last night. Let me set this up very quickly, and then I'm going to introduce Charmaine first. I'm going to set the table. And then it's a very important response we need to hear for a candidate for next Hamilton County Sheriff, Hamilton County, Ohio, in this very important role. So last night, we're in Cincinnati. Last night we had the protests. During the day, the protests were very peaceful, very organized. I was extremely impressed with the protesters and their organization. They had people in a medic role. They had people like security guard role, making sure everybody stayed together and didn't do any crazy stuff. I thought, generally speaking, some people have had issues with certain things as a general rule, especially compared to across the country. I thought the plan was good from CPD working with the sheriff's office and the highway patrol as well. We know those guys have extremely dangerous jobs. Friday night, we had an officer shot with apparently a rifle round, and with the nonsense that was going on up by UC and hitting the back of the ballistic helmet saved his life. Thank God their aim was so good that they didn't kill him, because if their aim was worse, it may have. All in all, last night I thought was pretty good. Then we had the curfew at 9 o'clock was a curfew. Tonight it's 8. So start coming in and watch this for conversation. At 9 o'clock the curfew.
Yeah.
And so then it was still kind of crazy. Now they weren't doing anything. I didn't see any major damage. They weren't going crazy and breaking windows and stuff. I was right out there in the mix of it. But they were still out. People were out there out of cars and motorcycles doing the wheelies and all that. And then there were a very small subset, because there were thousands earlier in the day. There was a subset of the protesters going to, in their passive show of support, they were going to be arrested. That's what they were going to do. And so there was a group at Liberty and Vine. There was another group up on Green Street, up by Finley Market. And so they were arrested, taken to the jail in I believe it was 3 metro buses. So there was some number north of 100, between 100 and 150 arrests. That's my opinion, and this is where I want to get the expert on it. I'm going to introduce the expert here. In my opinion, that's where the plan fell apart. There was a game plan for 3 quarters. The fourth quarter, there did not appear to be a game plan. So I'm getting the calls this morning out in the sun or whatever. I detoured over there. That outside all night. What if it had been raining or something? They were outside, didn't have blankets, no water, which I want you to explain how this typically works when someone gets booked into the jail. If they come in after dinner service, do they get a sandwich, or do they have to wait till breakfast? Do they get water? We want to know those things. What were the difference for the people that were arrested that were stuck outside? I was getting where they were soiling themselves. They were pissing themselves, basically. And whatever else bodily functions that they needed to do. I heard there were females that did not have access to sanitary pads, and they were on their period. Is that how it's supposed to go? Then by sometime later, at 4, I don't know the exact hour, but the arrest took place early. This wasn't like the other night when it was 2 and 3 a.m. It was 9 p.m., 10 p.m.
Yeah.
hour. So now they're stuck
Yeah.
with buses for hours. I'm hearing at like 4 a.m. they finally figured out this is not working. We can't book them fast enough. So
Right.
all CPD. CPD comes over, starts writing everybody tickets to get them the hell out of there as fast as possible. It still took to roughly 1 p.m. to get everybody out. So
Wow.
that's the kind of the my best estimate of how that time frame all went and how that played out. It seemed to me that the wheels fell off after 10 o'clock when they got to the jail and the jail wasn't prepared. Charmaine
Right.
McGuffy, uh,
Yeah.
with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office for what 28 years.
20, 33.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
Yeah.
only a
33.
third of a decade.
Yeah. What's
Only
yeah.
a third of a decade. No big deal.
Yeah. Right.
And as a major led efforts running being in charge of this exact thing, being
Mm-hmm.
in the Hamilton County Jail, took
Yeah.
the jail's statewide rating. There's 88 counties in Ohio from number 88. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. From number 88 to number 1 in your tenure. Obviously, with
That's
the
right.
help of a team and doing different things, putting in the
Right.
heroin pod, some other progressive things, and
Yep.
then I explained how the machine oftentimes doesn't like reform-minded people in a very monolithic and conservative organizations such as law enforcement, particularly sheriff's offices. And so
Right.
now you are running. You beat actually the current sheriff is Jim Neal is now a lame duck. You beat
Yep.
him in a landslide in the March, which became the April primary, and
Mm-hmm.
70 to 30. And so I think the die has been cast, a message has been sent. But nevertheless, you have a Republican opponent who seems to, I haven't seen a whole lot of the guy. I don't know what he's doing. Was he out today? Has anybody seen I'm not
I
saying the name.
I didn't see him. I didn't see him out.
AWOL. So candidate AWOL was nowhere to be seen today. But anyway, his thing is, kind of the old school, kick ass and take names. That seems Law and Order, all the dog whistle terms seems to be the method. We'll say I don't think it's effective these days in Hamilton County. We'll find out. But anyway,
Huh?
it still has an opponent, so we'll find out in November. In my view, you're going to be the
Yeah.
Hamilton
Right.
County Sheriff, but we're going to have to support you to make that happen. Having said
That's
that, you're an
right.
expert in the field. Okay, I'm done for a hot minute. Everybody is glad that I'm finally losing my voice, so I can shut the hell up. But Charmaine McGuffy, thank you and welcome. I think it was very important for everybody to get on the same page and we set the table of
Yeah.
where we're at.
Absolutely.
Share with me, am I off base on anything that I said? Was any of that out of line or that's not how it happened? And then, but most importantly, I want to hear your thoughts on the situation
Mm-hmm.
in jail last night. And then we're going to get into today's goings on over there at the courthouse. So with that, Charmaine
Absolutely.
McGuffy, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me on again. And thanks for everyone who's tuned in. The very first thing I want to say is my thoughts and prayers go out to that officer who was hit in the helmet with a round. That's a super scary thing. Derek, from being a cop, I know that, at the moment, you do what you need to do, you keep it together, you write the report, you do all those things, and then you go home and think about the fact that you were almost killed. Then is when you start to process that situation. That's when your family starts to process, oh my God. And so I want to say and reach out to that officer. He absolutely has my support 100%. And I'm so sorry that happened to him. So, having said that, I will move on to the jail situation. You're exactly right. That jail situation I started getting calls about it and this morning, and people were asking me, "Is this the way it's supposed to go?" Because they were getting videos shared. There were people that were obviously on. I watched the videos. They were in that Sally Port. That's our car Sally Port, right? So you drive in to park your vehicle, take your prisoner into intake. So obviously they moved cars out of that Sally Port area, which opens it up and still secured by two humongous garage doors, right? And they, from what I saw on the video, those people, those men and women, were milling about in that area, and there were quite a lot of them because the video that I saw was loud. There was a woman on one of them who, you could tell as she was talking, she was getting progressively more and more freaked out. And that can happen when you're in confinement. That can happen when you're in jail.
Yep.
and and particularly if you've never been there before, you start to wonder, and your mind plays a little tricks on you. Oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Am I ever going to get out? And am I in danger? And it's a mentality that it appears the group started sharing. So beyond that trauma that occurred to those people that were there, and you can say, well, they should have gone to jail, so who cares about their trauma? Well, I do care about their trauma. That's not what's supposed to happen in jail. We are supposed to have care, custody, and control. That is a absolute basic. And so when they brought those people, and I was watching the footage on TV quite closely, and I saw them pull up with all the different people in the buses, and it did appear to me from what was reported in the media that these people had a somewhat of a plan. May have been a loose plan, but the plan was to give up and be arrested.
Right.
It appeared to me that many of them planned on being arrested.
Yep.
So that's why your numbers just went skyrocket, because who would have known that, okay, they've all decided amongst themselves, we're just going to give up and be arrested.
Right.
Usually people are afraid of that, they go home. So now you have your buses full. And actually, using the Metro buses is it's a plan that we've had in place for many, many years, but it was planned in case of a riot. In case we had a riot or a disruption inside the jail, we were prepared to use Metro buses.
Some people would say we had riots in the streets this weekend. I don't know what qualifies as a riot versus a civil disturbance or something else, but you're talking about an actual riot inside the jail.
That's right. If we had a disturbance, and they call them disturbances now, they call them riots, but if we had a disturbance inside that jail, one of the game plans to bring the prisoners out, if we're trying to get control inside, or a fire or anything else where we have to release some prisoners, we roll the Metro buses up, we fill them up, and we have people there to do that. So the Metro buses came into play, which again, that's been something we've known for a very long time. We can utilize that. But you're exactly right when you say that's where it fell apart, because to allow those, and I don't know exactly what happened. I cannot wait to read the reports. I can't wait until the media tells us exactly the factual things of how this happened and who was responsible.
In that regard, Nicole is reporting, or says there's reports that it was 172 people. So apparently the media is reporting that. I don't know if that's confirmed, but that sounds about right. It was definitely more than 100. And what you're saying now is that the actual, so we're used to police reports. We're not used to like jail reports, but the jail actually, the officers in the jail actually write, there's some type of bookkeeping, of reporting of things that happen there. And that would be public record. And so we'll be able to get those. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. Everybody that was brought into that jail that was booked in will have some type of JMS record, jail management system. They would have been entered into the jail management system, and information, can be had from that. But what I want to, focus on here is it does appear that there was absolutely no real plan to get these people inside the jail. Now, here's a couple of things I would have considered as sheriff. One, we're in a pandemic, right? I want to keep my personnel safe. I know that I am having disruption in the city. I know that I could have mass arrest. So I want to prepare my officers with as much PEEs as they can have, any of that protective equipment. And then not only am I going to bring...
Let me interrupt you on that point, because one of the things that I heard today was that not only did they not have the water access to the restroom or water for quite some time, and then the thing that really exacerbated that was they had been marching around all damn day for 10 hours, and so they were particularly thirsty because of that. I don't know if there was any OC exposure or not, so that would have been another thing that would be treated for that. But but they were saying, actually, it would have kind of been nice if they would have had a mask for me, because when we all came in there packed together, apparently there were some of them trying to stay separated, but then they couldn't when they're in the bus, and then when they get there into the sally port, which is a fancy word for a garage in a jail,
right.
Would there have been PPE? Would there have been masks perhaps for the prisoners? Are they allowed to have that, or is that a safety thing because it has strings and such?
Well,
but they're still handcuffed with the zip ties.
yeah, for this group of prisoners, I think that providing some masks for them would have been appropriate, particularly when you stuck them all inside that area in such close proximity. Okay, maybe you didn't have the money for masks. Okay, you didn't have the foresight to order a whole lot, but your
Well, I mean, they
deputies
should.
should.
We got X number of dollars that they can't figure out how to spend from the feds. That is
Mhm.
for all of that stuff for COVID. So there should be tons of that stuff laying around, I would think, because they put all these limitations that you can only spend it on COVID and not other random stuff. But anyway, I digress.
Right. And so, yes, I mean, we need to care about the safety of those people that we're bringing into our facility to have them stay outside all night. I have absolutely no idea who made that decision. I'm right now going to tell you that was absolutely flat out the wrong call. That was ridiculous. That is absolutely not the way you care and custody people.
It was
You know,
cold last night.
it was cold. It was cold. It was, there were a lot of things that can happen when you have a large group of people like that outside with no way to have a blanket. Apparently, water was, and some people have said, well, we had water. Well, I could tell you this, if everybody had water, people wouldn't be complaining about it if there was enough water. So some people may have gotten water, but because of the fact that there's so many people saying they didn't have water, that tells me water was an issue. It also tells me that the bathroom was an issue. And we have a huge gym, by the way, inside that jail. We have a
Really, I'm
huge
not. I've
gym.
been in the jail and I've been into booking and I've been in around there a little bit, but I did not know there was a gym in there.
There's an inside gym. It's on the second floor, and it is twice as large as that garage Sallyport area. Now, I get that we want to be very careful when we bring people through our jail. We don't want contraband coming in our jail and so forth. But the key here is to transport people in small enough groups that you can get them up into the gym. You bring in your officers that will, staff that gym. So you've got extra officers on hand. You know you're going to need that, so you schedule them in, and those officers set up in that gym. Now, as you're booking people in, you do have to identify who they are, right? I mean, that's absolutely a part of being booked in. But while you're doing all of those processes of fingerprinting, booking in, and getting all the information, you take those people in small enough groups to manage. You take them up, you house them in that gym under supervision. We have plastic boats. I don't know what the population is down at that jail, but I heard that they emptied it out quite a bit. I heard Jim Neal say we have plenty of room. Remember him
I think,
saying that?
I
Three,
think the
four.
number. Yeah, I think the number I heard was that 600 people were released or kicked out. Something like that. So just
Yeah,
overnight, we had the jail population went down 600 is the number that I heard.
absolutely. And Jim Neal keeps going on TV saying, oh, we have plenty of room for the protesters. We have plenty of room. Well, no, he doesn't. Not if he's housing them out in an outdoor Sallyport area. So he does have room, but he doesn't know how to utilize the room. And, I want to say this, the staff at the jail are excellent, excellent people. The supervisors are excellent. The officers are excellent. But in a situation like this with mass arrest, you need a leader. The leader should have been there on site, orchestrating all of those things. And when things go wrong, because Derek, from being in this business in a uniform, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And these are things that we know happen. So your major should have been there. The captains should have been there. All hands on deck, right? And you troubleshoot this. So the first thing I'm going to say is yes, we had an area inside that jail beyond the cells or whatever would have been our gym to take those people. We have plastic boats that prisoners have typically slept in. I know. I don't know how many of those we have on hand, but those are available. We could have been using them in the gym with these people rather than having them stand out in the cold. The other part to this is once you realize you have people on buses and you have too many people to navigate, somebody has to make that call that's a leader that says, hey, let's call down to Cincinnati Police and find out how we can remedy this, right?
Right.
I mean, That's a sit down, at 1 in the morning or whenever that, when it came to them, hey, we have a whole lot of people here that we can't process. That's when you sit down with people, get them out of bed, get the judges out of bed if necessary, and you say, guys, what are we going to do? I mean, that it took them that long in the morning to go down there and write citations and release those people. Come on, we can get them out sooner than that. And, I think that the poor planning for that situation falls squarely on Jim Neal and his leadership in the jail. Now, I'm not going to point the finger at any one person. I don't know who was in charge of orchestrating this. I know there's a major in charge of that jail. I didn't see that major on TV at all or any of the footage that I've seen so far. We haven't heard from him, but I sure would like to know from him, what was your game plan and exactly when did it fall apart? And then what did you try to do to fix it? Because it is unconscionable to have these people. And the way that I understand it too, by the way, Derek, is, I was watching that video and a few of those people, the woman on the video, she thought someone had died in the Justice Center. And apparently, rather than that, it was from what's been reported, it was someone having a seizure. All right, which again is not uncommon inside a jail. So here are the things that you plan for. Not only do you get your uniform officers out there, but you bring in your support staff, all your support staff. As I said, all hands on deck. And part of that support staff are social service people. And even if you don't have enough social service people inside your facility, you only have so many people for what you normally do in a day. You bring in people from agencies who want to help. You bring them to the table and you say, guys, we need people to go through these buses, okay, to take people's names and just be there to visually check on people. People who are in the social service agencies, who are in medical, need to be, walking through, kind of taking care of people, and here's the bathroom situation. When someone has to use the bathroom, and they're outside in that area, they're going to have to be escorted in. Well, how are you going to make that happen with limited officers, right? That's why in the gym, we have a bathroom.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment on that, because I want to put one slight devil's advocate on it, because you and I both know people play games and tell stories, right?
They do.
That's part of the thing. They're just, not going with the program, or they want to monkey around, or this or that. Or,
right.
I'm trying to get a trip to the hospital out of it.
Right.
I'm hurt. Oh, really? What's wrong with you? My back hurts. I need OxyContin. No.
Right. Yeah.
So no, like, you're gonna have to hold it for just a hot minute. As we get through this process, it just takes time. I'm sorry, we're gonna do that. But in this scenario, when you got 150 people, and tell us a little bit about that booking process, because I also want to touch on, and don't forget where we're at, which is talking about the bathroom. But then there's a question about, the decision. These are 4th-degree misdemeanors of curfew violation. But we're going to book them versus cite them, and then that changed at a certain point. And so I'll come back to that. But the bathroom stuff, how does that work? If I come in there, if I would have had my movie time moment and stormed the Bastille today, and they arrest me and take me over there, and I get over there because I got a peanut bladder and I got to go. And what are they gonna do? Are they gonna let me go? Are they gonna escort me in? Or are they gonna say you gotta wait? And what if there's 150 of us? Do we play bathroom pass, like hall pass, like high school, or how does that work?
Well, and again, now that's a logistic problem for our jail, right? We have limited bathrooms inside that jail, but we do have bathrooms. And, there are people that are going to have to, hear the words, hey, you're just going to have to wait, right? And there are people that are going to wait. But you do your absolute best when you come in a jail, and we have had men and women, of course, come in jail in handcuffs who say, hey, I got to use the bathroom. I got to use the bathroom, right? So particularly guys that have been drinking all night and got a DUI, and that's why they're in there, right? You can leave those people handcuffed. They can use the bathroom. If you need to, you can take the handcuffs and cuff people in the front. And here's the thing that these officers are trained to do. You are trained to assess and observe. If I have a guy in front of me who looks a little, we'll call it squirrely, right? I'm not really trusting him. His body language isn't right. He doesn't appear to me to be telling the truth. He's angry, whatever those cues are that we are trained to pick up. We are professional observers. Then I say, well, I'm going to tell that guy, hang out right here for a few minutes, you know, and he may wait a little longer until I can make sure I have some security, till I get a pretty good read on what's his energy, right? What's he going to do? Most people I've been in this business 33 years. I've been in that jail more years than I like to count. And most people who want to use the bathroom have to use the bathroom. I mean, I've I've never had anybody go into the bathroom with me and go crazy on me because that was, how they lured me away from everyone. Um, they realize that there's officers all over that place, and you're going to go to the bathroom when you say that. So that's been my experience. Um, so those are cues that officers can look for. And yes, it's going to be very problematic for all of those people to use the restroom. I mean, it just really is.
My suggestion was if we're doing so they do what's called a tabletop exercise where you game plan all of these things, and here
Hmm.
like setting up a stratego board and different
Right,
things, and you have all your plans, and that's what happened pretty well for out here, right? And especially when you have
right,
agencies, you can't just make this stuff up unless something really goes sideways. But generally
right,
speaking, you have your plan. We know Officer A is going to this intersection. I'm not trying to figure that
right,
out at the moment. At 7 o'clock,
right,
I need you here. You're here.
right,
That stuff is pretty detailed. How that's all laid out
right.
over time, especially since 9/11. We've gotten much more incident command and all of that.
Hmm.
But is there that same kind of thing inside the jail? That's what seemed like it didn't happen. Because my suggestion was, if we think we're going to have 150 people coming in here, perhaps on this
Hmm.
all of this nonsense going on, maybe we could have a couple porta potties in there. I know that might be crazy. I don't know if that's a security appropriate, but that could be a thing. I heard somebody say, folks, I can't confirm this. I'm just telling you, this is what I was told out there. Somebody was allowed to go in a bush or something.
Yeah.
I or just go outside or go something over somewhere. So, is there in your time was there any of that kind of game planning, or we just haven't had a scenario like this, so it's something that doesn't really exist, or could there be more of an orchestrated plan for a mass like we do for out the street within the jail?
I guarantee you, Derek, and here I'll give you an example. I ran the security for the Tenzing trial. All right. It was one of the most historic, most tense situations in Cincinnati's history, right? And particularly in our Hamilton County Courthouse.
Right.
So we had to anticipate that we may have mass arrest. And I'll tell you what I did, exactly what you said. I brought people to the table. I talked to all of our officers. I brought the community to the table first to say, hey, how can you help us? What can we do to educate people about what this process might be? And then we sat down and did just that. We troubleshoot. We say, well, what if? Right? We were prepared. We had everything lined up. We had extra people in intake. We knew exactly how that intake process was going to go to expedite. We were going to do a very shortened, expedited intake process to get these people in right away. And those are the things that you do. I would not have left those people out in that Sallyport. I just wouldn't have done it. They come into the jail in controlled groups. We get them in the gym. We control them in an environment where they do have access to bathrooms, where they are warm enough and can have blankets and things like that. Um, and that does entail patting people down. We're going to have to pat each one of those prisoners down before they come inside that jail. Security is important.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that security and the rules versus, I calling an audible, right? And
Hmm.
circumstances, typically, 99.9 times out of 100, we would do it this way. That's what the rule book says. But there's sometimes
Right.
when based on all of the totality of the circumstances, you need to call an audible and not just keep going headlong in a way that if you have that vision and foresight and experience that could end
That's
up
right.
very, very badly. So, typically, and for me as a road officer, when I bring somebody into the jail, if there's already somebody ahead of me in booking, you just sit out there with them and wait. You could be out there 15, 20 minutes. It's a process. It takes time. How
Right.
people can come, and so what you're saying is the rule says that the last thing we want is, oh my God, all of a sudden somebody's got a gun in a damn jail. Because for
That's
people that
right.
don't know this, the cops aren't allowed to bring weapons in there. There's a
That's
lockbox
right.
on the outside, and so
That's
when
right.
for me as a police officer, I'm leaving all of my weapons. Back in the old days, we used to like put it in the trunk or throw it under the seat, but that's not good. So there's lock boxes, and you take all your stuff off, and there's the law says you can't bring a gun into the jail. Applies to the cops too. So
That's right.
and the deputies that are and the corrections officers that are working in there, they are not not armed. Would they have some type of something? What do they have for anything?
They, yeah, we have supervisors have tasers.
Okay.
We have actual tasers. We do not carry mace anymore. We never did carry mace in the jail. We got rid of that years and years ago when it was the old workhouse.
So only the supervisors have tasers, but the bottom line for folks that don't know, nobody brings guns into jail. It's a big no.
That's right.
The last damn thing you need is all of a sudden you didn't search somebody, you bring them in there, you're going to have hell to pay and questions to answer. So just going by the typical playbook that you
Hmm.
bring, how many people can fit in there at a time? One or two or three
Well,
into in
in our
or
yeah, in our intake area, we have a very large sitting area, but each prisoner is brought in, identified at a window, right? We put them on an identifier and we take their fingerprint. We bring them through with the officer. All the paperwork is shuffled around. Then they go to the search wall. They're searched at the search wall. Then they move from that search wall to the property area. We take their property, which would be your wallet, cell phones, any of those things that we find
and all
in the
stuff
search.
has to be inventory to every single thing that they have
Absolutely.
is written
Right.
exactly what it is, so somebody can't say, well, you
Hmm.
stole this or you took that.
That's right.
And then the bigger picture with that is this takes time, and when you have 150 people all at the same time, and every one of them you got to go through all of these steps, it takes a long time to do that. So
Yes.
they're just overwhelmed. Like the system does not have the capacity. You're putting 10 gallons of people in a 5 gallon space. So
Yes.
is that what's
That's
happening there?
exactly. That's exactly what happened. Exactly what you described. That takes manpower. You have to have people there to pat people down, and you have to have enough female officers because we don't allow male officers to pat down females. So, I can't say it enough. The all hands on deck is so important. Everybody pitches in, everybody comes in and helps. And, one of the things that our officers are absolutely excellent at is finding things on people. We are professional, search officers. I mean, we know how to search. We do it all day long. We find the minute, littlest things. So, we do search those prisoners coming in. That's why I said you break them into small groups, you search them really well so that we know who we have. We know what we have anyway, maybe not who right at the moment,
Right.
but we get them up into that safe space, again, with adequate supervision. And, if you've got a bad actor, somebody doesn't want to do what you tell them to do or whatever, we don't have time to mess with you. You're going to go straight into a cell by yourself. We'll find you a cell immediately. Um, and those kinds of things can occur. Now, is that out of the norm for a jail? Yes, it is. That is not something that typically policy and procedure we would do that way. But just like you said, you come to the table, the leaders make decisions that say what's best in this scenario and how can we best do this by the book and safely. And I'm all about law and order. These people were arrested. I think they knew they were going to get arrested.
Yep.
I think they're prepared for that. They weren't prepared to go without water. They weren't prepared to go without any bathroom facilities or food. We start serving food in that jail early in the morning. I mean, early. Now, I don't know how long. Again, you and I are on the outside looking in. So I have no idea how many hours or what time it was when these people got released. But I can tell you, we
Well,
start
I can tell
serving
you that there
chow.
was still, when I was there, I left at 12, roughly 12:50, 12:55 to go over to the 1 o'clock. By that time, the big crowd was already there over at the courthouse, and there was still
Uh-huh.
out. It was almost 1 o'clock. So you're talking from somewhere in the 9 o'clock hour, 9 to 10 p.m., and they were finally getting out at 1, and that was
Mhm.
And I'll back up just a little bit because I also want to talk about the difference between then if we're overwhelmed with the booking, at some point the decision was made we're not going to just going to stop booking people because it's a fourth degree misdemeanor. We can just write them a summons, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't even have to bring them in here and do all that stuff.
That's right.
So at somebody made a command decision, and that could have been over from the CPD side. I don't know, but somebody
Right.
made the command decision that we're not just going to cite and release these folks; that they're going to actually be booked into the jail. And that is you have discretion on. There is some discretion on that, and then CPD. I'm not familiar with all of their policy, but there's
Mm-hmm.
discretion on whether I'm actually going to arrest this person or whether up to a first degree misdemeanor or felony, you have to go in and be booked. But any
Right.
a misdemeanor, except a misdemeanor of violence like a domestic or something like that,
Right.
or an assault.
Right.
But with anything else, an M2, M3, nonviolent, the officer, really the arresting officer, depending on there's various variables you're going to look at, but you have the choice what
Mm-hmm.
release. Now I can understand at 9 o'clock that when you've got everybody there and they've been out and they're violating the curfew or whatever, if we just let them out, they're violating the curfew again. Or
Right.
they convene and start carrying on again. We don't want that.
Right.
So
That's right.
that, but at some point, it just seems like that call was made late because it still takes time to write all those tickets out. They're writing it by hand. You still got to
Right.
by the person, write it out. It still takes 20 minutes, a half hour each person.
Right.
What I was told, and again, I was not there firsthand, so it's somewhat hearsay, but the understanding that I have is that didn't start happening until the city got involved.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody, somebody at City Hall, the city law department, and whomever at CPD said
Mm-hmm.
there was some communication that says, "Hey, this is not happening fast enough. What's going on?"
Right.
That was actually the city then saying, "Hey, we'll just go ahead and at this hour we're just going to start citing these people." And they actually dispatched the on-duty CPD cops, is my understanding, to go over
Mm-hmm.
and summons all these people. So,
Right.
but then by the time they got over there, got set up, get their summons out, get your pen, it's going to be this and that, and then
Right.
identify if they don't have their ID. I got to run them and figure out. It still takes time, and we saw then it went till 1 o'clock. And I don't know
Right.
how many officers they had doing that. So at some point, that decision could have been made maybe sooner, or
Oh,
have been prepared or set. And I can understand why they want to drag their feet past 9, 10 o'clock because we don't want them to get back
sure.
doing the same thing. If that happened, I
Exactly.
have questions to answer. But
Right.
how would we do that? What
Well,
could have been done there to expedite that whole thing?
Well, the first thing is your leader has to anticipate what the issues and problems will be, and you talked about that, Derek. Having a whatever you called it, a round table, saying, "Hey, here's your whiteboard. Here's what we can anticipate." Now, you guys who have been in this business many, many years, great people, tell me what can go wrong,
Right.
and then you
Because we know
draw it
we
out
only
from
have the
there.
capacity to book. There's some number, right? There's a data point that says this intake is
Hmm.
capable of processing under typical scenarios 10 people an hour. I don't know what the number is. I'm just making it up. But let's
Right.
say 10 people an hour. If I got 150 people, that tells me it's 15 hours. That's not going to work.
No. Right.
So you could do that math and say we have the capacity to maybe book 20, 40 people simultaneously in a reasonable amount of time. If it's beyond
Right.
that, we need
Yeah.
to cite and release people that we can cite and release unless they've done something, seriously crazy. Maybe there's other prisoners
Hmm.
being brought in. Maybe there was some other arrests or something. They're clogging it up even more. So, at some point, do we have but all of this is about game planning at the jail after
Right.
all of the tactical operations are going on the street.
That's right. And that is so important to your entire operation. Once you arrest these people, and I'm going to go back to listening to Jim Neal tell people, the sheriff tell people, we have plenty of room in our jail for looters, for anybody that breaks the law. Well, did he think beyond saying that you're going to have to book them in and there's a whole process that goes on with that jail and people that have to work in that process and officers who have to reassure that one, they are safe and that the support staff in there is safe And yes, processing somebody into a jail is time consuming. It absolutely is. You have to take their information, you enter it into the computer, you run them, you run their record, you find out who they are. We have to do all of these functions. And, to sit down and anticipate what might go wrong, plan for that, and so that when things do go wrong, which they will, they're small things.
Gotcha.
You know,
Gotcha.
your megaphone ran out of batteries, or something like that that you can easily fix. But crowd control is so important when you're in those situations where you have confined people now. And again, I'm going to say it wasn't fair to those young people. I understand that they violated curfew. I understand that they got arrested. But once they were incarcerated, it was unfair to allow them to feel freaked out, to allow them to feel as though they were powerless, that they couldn't, that something bad was going to happen to them, to be so afraid and freaked out.
So, and that gets back to my bigger point about, just in general from the law enforcement perspective, so much of this is about establishing that human rapport, right? You come into
Right,
jail and you don't have to be that robot that, is like
right,
orders or whatever the case may be. To have a little empathy and
right.
whatever. Oh, it's just these damn protesters, these damn Antifa kids or whatever. We're gonna, you don't want
Hmm.
to. You just, establish a rapport, and you've seen it
Right,
across the country. And to me, that anytime that you can do that, especially if it's not an active scenario, is better. Just breaking news right now. We got people saying that they just fired tear gas into the protest crowd. I'm not. Where are they at? Can somebody tell me where they're at right now? Because we're at 7:51, and so curfew was moved up to 8 p.m. tonight. So that's going on. So we may be in the same scenario. Hopefully they've figured out a better game plan today.
yes.
I don't know. But we've been on for 40 minutes now, and we've still got a lot of people with us. We've still got 80 people here, so I appreciate everybody stopping in. Please share
Hmm.
this. We need, I think, as many people in Hamilton County and maybe across the country to hear this as possible, because some of the things that you and I are trying to do, a little outside of the box kind of thinking, not
Right,
dangerous, but how can we make systems better,
right.
are probably discussions that need to go on in a lot of places. The next thing I want to do to just kind of move along, and we'll keep an eye on this. Drop it in the comments what's going on, everybody, because I don't know what's going on outside right now. Tear gas at the courthouse. So I guess we're going to run around downtown at OTR now again,
Yeah,
but we'll find out and hope for the best,
right.
and nobody gets hurt and no damage.
Yeah,
Because the other thing, let me back up. I like to start all of these discussions with, for me, the most important thing is we wouldn't even be here if we could solve this issue of some road cops, going rogue on us and killing some people that they
right.
shouldn't, sure as hell shouldn't be killing. That's why we're
That's
here.
right.
That's why all of this is going on in the
Yeah,
first place. We
that's right.
cannot lose sight of that.
Right,
George Floyd hashtag. No, you don't kneel on his neck for 9 damn minutes.
right,
We had the moment of silence, and so I'll use this as segue into what happened out at the courthouse prior to right now, because we're in here talking.
right,
The courthouse earlier today. Uh, we got to get the cops to stop doing that. If you're doing that, you're not welcome in our club anymore.
right.
But today we had, so at 12:55 I left when they're still releasing people, and I go over to the courthouse. I know you were there. I didn't happen to run into you. I saw Fanon Rucker, who we're going to have on tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Right.
Aftab Purabal was out there. Our clerk of courts was helping to coordinate
Hmm.
things as if people were being released with their court dates and things, and a number of other folks. You were there as well. I think you
Yes.
felt and sensed that energy that was in the crowd. There were tears flowing everywhere. One of the
Right.
things that we're seeing nationally, and I posted about it yesterday, the things that have been very heartening to me, and we talked a little bit about how law enforcement agencies are conservative entities. They're kind of
Right.
ossified and stratified. They have their way
Right.
of doing it. It's kind of like a machine. If you go against the grain of the machine, the nature of the machine is that the gears will chew you up and spit you out. I think
Right.
your amazing 33-year career, that's kind of what happened there at the end.
Yeah.
We saw that in my opinion, with Chief Blackwell, with the city a number of years ago. However, Chief Isaac, and I can hear him on a loudspeaker out here now. I think they're call. Yeah, there's stuff going on outside that I can hear, but this is a very important
Right.
conversation. We'll see. We'll tune in on that. That we had Chief Isaac yesterday take a knee with the not really protesters, but the people at Inwood Park. We
Mm-hmm.
across the country. The sheriff. This is the specific question. One of the specific questions I want to ask you about today. Um, the specific question of a sheriff, and now I forget his name, Swanson in
Right.
Genesee County, which I think was very interesting. A white male sheriff there in Genesee County,
Yeah.
Michigan, which is Flint, and we know the history, recent history of years of what's going on in Flint, right? If there, you need
Right.
establishing rapport in a community, Flint is a good place to start. And
Mm-hmm.
Coral Gables, Florida, he went out. That sheriff went out. He took all his gear off and says, "Okay, what are we doing here, guys? Like, I'm with you. We don't support that nonsense. We're with you on that.
Right.
We don't buy into that.
Right.
Where are we going?" They go, "We're marching. You want to march with us?" He's like, "Yeah, let's go." And left his gear behind, so
Yep.
they got it, and picked it up. And then we saw Coral Gables, Florida. I had the picture of the cops, the whole cops taking a knee on the city hall there, or the courthouse
Mm-hmm.
was. Um, that was what the crowd was begging for today. For everybody that watched my live, I think it's up to like 15,000 views from across the country. I was right there. I'm watching the line of deputies in the secure line with the shields and all of that. You have the supervisors behind that are kind of controlling. Of course, this is game planned out. It's not like we just figured it out. There's some game plan to this.
Yeah. Right.
Then
There's a
you've
whole
got the
game
command
plan.
staff in the back. The sheriff was not there at first. He was not there at first.
Right.
There, a couple of the judges I saw came out, were standing there. There were a couple of, although CPD, well, this is a court security, so it's the sheriff's department. There were a couple of
Right.
CPD commanders there, just kind of observing in the back. The crowd is doing the chants and doing all that and all that peacefully.
Right.
I'm right there, so I've got the crowd. I'm hearing what they're saying. Officers, there's a handful of African American black deputies there, most white. Some women. There was a black female, a white female, but mostly white male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're saying at some point the chant is take a knee, and they're asking, people are like talking because the distance is not that far. We're talking 10, 15 feet. You can see in their eyes with the clear shields. And
Right.
they're saying take a knee. To me, in my opinion, it's been very positively symbolic of the officers that have done that. It's continued on today in Beaver Creek, of all places. We know what happened up there, John Crawford.
Uh-huh.
Took a knee to just this evening. We saw Chief Isaac yesterday. And I'm saying, where's the leadership? It's easy. Yeah, I know, bombing, you're retired, hang the spurs up and go sit on a beach in Fort Myers. Well, it ain't happening. Sorry. I'm right there, and I'm like, if I go up there, they're going to arrest my ass. So that's probably not going to get too far because nobody knows who the hell I am and they don't care. But I'm like, if I am the sheriff, and I'm saying this on my live, if Charmaine McGuffy were here right now, if this was 6 months fast forward and Charmaine McGuffy is in office, what would Charmaine
Right.
McGuffy do? The sheriff's nowhere to be found, a leader. What if he
Yeah.
comes out and stands there? I'm telling you, they would have erected a bronze statue of Jim Neal up there.
Yes.
If he'd have came out there and said, without prompting, not because I was busting his balls for 30 minutes on live,
Mm-hmm.
but because that was the right thing to do at that moment when we call an audible, like we earlier talked about. Not in the official game
Right.
plan. The official game plan is like this, high security. But in that
Right.
moment, and that entire crowd, there's probably 2,500 people there. I'm telling you, it would have busted into applause, and then the whole line comes down. It's almost like the showgirls, you know.
Yeah.
We try,
Right.
and it's that, and everybody, and maybe this still goes on. I don't know, but I felt that was that moment where there's like this leadership vacuum, and really we're just going to stand here and stare at each other like this. But we see other places doing it, but Rome wasn't built in a day. We got to start somewhere. So if Charmaine McGuffy's a sheriff, and okay, Derek and Charmaine are on their Monday morning quarterbacking. It's real easy to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, what do you think your game plan would have been if you were the actual sheriff today in front of 2,500 people? Just take a knee with us.
Right.
And what do you do that? Or you say, no, the rule says, the old playbook says that we stand here like this, and God damn it, we're standing here like that because that's what we do. Then, hold on. Give me one more minute on my riff, folks, because I'm fired up. Then the sheriff comes out. I know what happened. I was busting his ass for 20, 25 minutes on there. I know it. And I take no joy in that, but I'm feeling this moment is just calling for it. The movie script is there, and the lead actor he's still back in the green room. he finally comes out. It's like, okay, all right. I know that people were texting him. I know he was probably watching in there. He comes out, and it was kind of the sense people were like, and he wasn't. Usually, he's in the in the 10-gallon hat, and there's a name for it. I'm screwing it up. I apologize to all my deputies. I just don't know the name of it. But the sheriff's hat, the Western style, and
Yes.
anybody he was in a ball cap and like a tactical outfit. So nobody knew who he was. I mean, he's a tall guy, but it's a big crowd, and we're way down at the side. There wasn't like an announcement, and this is something. If I might have game planned for that, I might have had a damn PA out there to address the crowd, or got down there or went in. You're not supposed to in a crowd, but they were calling an audible. The moment called for that, and it wasn't there. And finally, and people were like, they're like over there. They kind of cheered, and then it was kind of like, and he had some words. I don't know what the words were, and it was just kind of like, eh. Then. Parallel to that, we have apparently there was a black female where I was at, but clear on the other end. I wish I would have been down there. I wasn't down there. There is a black deputy. God bless his soul. The people, I'm telling you, people are sending me messages from the folks that were down there. They're like, the crowd was speaking directly to them. This is our sons and our brothers that have been killed out here unjustly, and you know this. How can you stand up? We're just asking for something very simple. And I'm telling people, I don't feel like the crowd's going to storm the gates here. When I take a knee, I'm at a tactical disadvantage. I'm at a tactical disadvantage when the cops are killing people they shouldn't kill. That puts me in a tactical disadvantage. Am I right?
Correct.
So I don't know if there was some conversation, but he takes a knee. And either the white officer, male officers on either side of him go down with him. And the three of them are taking it, and I'm like, I'm looking, and I see it looks like three, but I can't tell who it is. I can't tell that's the black officer was kind of the central focus point of it. And I'm like, and the crowd goes like this, and I'm like, are the dominoes gonna fall? Is this it? And everybody else stayed standing. And at some point, I don't know if they got relieved down there, and because it's hot and everything, and
it's hot.
Female officer got relieved where I was at. I don't know if she was feeling lightheaded or they for a reason. But the dominoes didn't fall. But still, I appreciate the fact, because Jim Neal, you're probably watching this right now. I appreciate you coming out there. It was a little late, and it was a little half baked. I don't know if it was because of me or not. I'm going to take credit for it, but thank you for coming out there. It's a step in the right direction, but it needs to be authentic and organic. It has to be from here. People can see right through smoke screens and bullshit. So that's how you do it. Having said that, he did go out there and do it. So if there is a rule, I don't know, maybe you can tell me. If there's a rule that said, or maybe they laid the law down ahead of time and said, or they're telling people, don't take a knee, because we can also ask you this situation with the blue flag that went up yesterday. That went up and came down. We don't know if the sheriff approved that or somebody went rogue on that nonsense. But now, if those officers were under orders not to do that, the sheriff did it. So he broke his own order. So if he's writing them up for insubordination, he can insubordinate himself and resign early 6 months, so we can get on with it. So what is your thoughts on that? What would Charmaine McGuffy, Sheriff McGuffy, at that moment, were you there? What was your sense of that? Am I off base on any of this? Tell me how screwed up I am, because if I'm messed up, somebody tell me I'm out of my mind.
Well,
it was just very frustrating. What would you have done?
Yeah,
the whole thing.
I'll answer that question by saying this. I was in that same crowd. I was watching that dynamic play out, and I was beside myself, talking to people who are influential, some elected officials, and I was saying to them, the sheriff needs to get out here. He has to get out here. You could see and feel that crowd. They weren't going to leave or calm down or do whatever it was they were going to do for the next step to try and disperse this crowd until they got to see a leader. And, things started to get a little more heated up because the deputies stepped down on the steps a little bit. The crowd creeped up a little bit. And now we have all of that face-to-face on the shields and so forth. And, I could feel it. It was palatable in the air. And I was telling people, call the sheriff. Tell him to get out here. And again, this goes back to leadership. This goes back to anticipating the fact that I'm going to have to address a crowd. So darn right, you get yourself a megaphone over there, you get yourself a microphone, you prepare for the fact that you are going to have to step out and possibly address this crowd, right? Particularly that it's a peaceful protest, a rally. And you know, when you come out just like that, we should be, as a sheriff, I will walk with the community. I'll take a knee. I'll also take action. And that's the key. And that's what I was doing as the major. And that's exactly why I got 70% of the vote, because I was working on actions. You know, a lot of people talk a lot of things, and people can say anything, but it's your actions that tell who you are. That tells the real story. When you wait to come out to that crowd and allow your deputies, your excellent, excellent officers who've been there many years, who are so professional, to take that kind of encounter without you being the leader, to step out there and relieve some of that tension, because that's what it was all about.
Yep.
You know,
Building is
I
a
mean,
pressure cooker.
go out there. Don't let your deputies take the brunt of that. You're the leader. You go out and represent, and you say, and that's what I would have done. These are my men and women who I trust and respect. They did not do this thing. Okay. They are excellent people, and we will prove it to you. Give us a chance. We appreciate that you're protesting. And I'm going to tell people all day long, you're allowed to do this. I encourage you to do it, you know? And the other thing I would have done as sheriff, by the way, is as soon as that happened and I became aware of that incident in Minneapolis, I would have been calling leaders in the Black community, in the African American community, to say, please come to the table and let's talk about this. I would have tried to, you can't anticipate everything, and hindsight's always 2020, but I'm a communicator. And when I look forward and I say, oh my God, this is unbelievable, I want to get input. I want people at the table. So when I do step in front of that crowd, I'm going to say something that resonates with them as the sheriff, because I have spoken to people whose lives have been directly impacted by that kind of ridiculousness, that murder, and those people will guide me and help me to communicate as the sheriff. And that's what I would have done. That would have been my focus, beyond the fact that I would push my excellent staff, and I can't talk well enough about the deputies and so forth in uniform. Sure, you're always going to have bad apples here and there, but I would have pushed my staff to a direction of, this is what we're going to focus on. Right. We're going to focus on people. We're going to focus on calming this down. And when you get to the flag incident, by the way, I got to tell you, I got calls immediately when that flag went up. And that is a message. When I saw it, when I saw the picture, what I thought was, a question flashed through my mind. Is this intended to antagonize more violence? Is this intended to antagonize more people? Because that's exactly what it's going to do. And again, there's your foresight. I was told the sheriff was standing right there when that flag was erected, really? By the way.
Really? I didn't. Yes. I wasn't aware of that one way or the other.
That was an eyewitness told me that. Yes. And, I wasn't there. Maybe he wasn't there. I was told he was there. It was an extremely poor call. And, I don't know what the message was supposed to be, because we do feel for that officer that was shot at, that the round hit his helmet. I tell you, I think about him. I thought about him that night. I lost sleep over that. I thought, oh my God, thank God he wasn't injured, more seriously or anything. And, but those are the kinds of things that we create dialogue around, that we create a ceremony for, that we give awards for, that we talk about, that we give accolades for your bravery, your courage, and those kinds of things. We don't, run a flag up a flagpole that we know is going to antagonize a huge crowd of people that are so very upset, and rightly so.
Right. And as a matter of fact, somebody sent me a screenshot on that, made the news in the Guardian, the UK newspaper, And one of the things that always happens is because people don't know the difference between the police department and the sheriff's department. And the headline reads Cincinnati police, raise flag and something about antagonistic and all of that. And so now that people are probably, there was probably 100 calls into the city today trying. They're like, it's not us, and they're like, well, wait a minute, it's in Cincinnati. So people don't even,
Right.
and then all that gets confused. So you're saying that would not have happened on your watch?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know whose idea it was. If somebody had that idea, not meaning for it to be antagonistic, we would have talked that through. And I'm telling you, anybody can say hindsight's 2020, but that's not the way I operate. We had an American flag up there with a POW flag under it for all the years I've ever walked into that Justice Center. Somebody took the flag. Let's go get another one.
Right.
I was in charge of the honor guard, the commander of the honor guard for years. I happen to know there's 3 or 4 flags inside that jail. I know it. And even if there isn't, here's some money out of my pocket, go down and buy a flag, because there should be an American flag flying there right now. I don't think there is. When I went by today, I didn't see one. Replace it.
Right.
Go out, replace that thing right away.
And the other thing is, if we're saying we're following all the rules right by the book, there are the protocols from the federal government that says the U.S. flag is always at the top. So if you don't have a U.S. flag, there shouldn't be anything up there at the top of the flagpole on a government building like that. If you're putting that up there now, it's not at the highest stakes.
That's exactly right.
Outside of that protocol, anyway. Besides the point. I can still hear stuff going on outside. Do we have any updates from outside, folks? What's going on out there? We've got tons and tons of comments here. I'm going to try to look at. One of the topics that there's a number of questions on here. People are asking about, and I know this is one of the things that's come up. The Sheriff's Department has a lot of hardware. We've got I don't know exactly what they call it, but the armored personnel carrier, people call it the tank because that's kind of what it looks like. We've got a helicopter. The helicopter with this stuff but when it's flying over we were doing 9 minutes of silence and it's flying over, that's one of those things where it's a little bit antagonistic. I don't know if we need to be right there at that moment. But especially the tank, and people were talking a lot about the militarization of police and all of the gear and some of the heavy weaponry and those types of things. What's your thoughts on some of that stuff?
Well, when I was down there today, what I saw was the HCPA, which is the Hamilton County Police Association. They had their assault vehicle there, their SWAT vehicle.
The term that it's called, it's assault vehicle, and it's a county.
Yeah.
So all the police departments in the county would have access to it if they think they need it.
Yes, and that's a specialized team that's made up of officers from all over the different municipalities, and it's quite a professional situation. I want to tell you that. I mean, they have professional hostage negotiators. I mean, that team is created for the right reasons, and they get great results. And, we need those people, and we need that vehicle. Those are necessary things for us to do our job in moments of crisis out there, things that we need to handle. But the idea being this, in a crowd like this, we do want de-escalation. We want to try to de-escalate as much as possible, which is exactly what I want to give a shout out to the Cincinnati Police Bike Patrol. Those bike officers are fabulous. I have watched them when I did security for that Tenzing trial, and everything was just so crazy out there with the protests and things like that. Those bike officers, you talk about courage with a capital C. I mean, they are bringing themselves and that bicycle to the table, to the show, and that's what they're using for crowd control.
Right.
It's amazing to watch them work. They're so well trained, so disciplined, and I want to give that shout out to them. I know they prevented a lot of different things, horrible things, bad things from happening in the city, during this whole entire time. Absolutely. So, but back to the point of having an assault vehicle there, I agree. It revs up the crowd. People see that, and they did have it parked around the corner. I'm not going to comment on what the game plan was, because obviously the police responded in a very measured way, and there are some really good guys that command those units. But you're exactly right. It is a militarization. We have cameras, by the way, all up and down the county campus. So when we want to see something, we can zoom in on a license plate.
So maybe what you're saying is that some of that stuff could be at least, but if we're going to have it, it could be behind the scenes, perhaps a little bit. So it's not,
Hmm.
but there's it's kind of opposing points of view where you have us saying that we're going to put all this stuff out on Front Street just to send a message, no nonsense,
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
you see
Right.
it visible. And there, it's kind of been this trend in law enforcement over the last number of years to now keep that stuff behind the scenes. Let's be more low key on a
That's
front,
right.
not get people jazzed up unnecessarily. Necessarily.
That's right. Yes, and that's what I saw on the footage that I watched last night on TV is I think that Cincinnati Police Department tried their absolute best to de-escalate at every turn. I know that people are hurting. I support their right to protest. I'm horrified by that video, absolutely horrified. I have witnessed the mistreatment of African American people from a front row seat, and that's the jail.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that because that, if you don't mind getting into it, I mean, some of that kind of stuff, you took it, you
Right,
stand on some of that stuff, and you said, "Damn it, no, we're not going to be roughing people
right.
up in here. That's not how we're going to do business." And so
That's right.
took correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Some folks kind of took exception to that when you were trying
Uh,
to
yeah.
issue some discipline and those kinds of things.
Yeah, they did. They took exception to it. And I was not going to stand down. I've said that. I've said that in the press. I say it today. I believe it. I'd say it tomorrow, and I'd do it tomorrow. When something's wrong and you know it's wrong, you absolutely have to stand up and say it. And that's what I did. And I'll tell you, though, why well, not a lot, why some people don't. Why they don't in this business in particular is because you can take on an entire department
Right.
potentially. You take on a number of men and women, you take on a number of people that don't want that message out there, or for whatever reason, don't want to hear you talk about it. I was in trouble because I asked questions, for God's sakes. That's what I did. I simply was asking questions. Why, what, who, and there were a lot of different details that will come out. Of course, as you know, I'm in a lawsuit for wrongful termination because, I do have a right to call out civil rights violations, and that is my constitutional right. And that's exactly what I did. I'm a whistleblower, and, it isn't right. During my career, I've called out a number of wrongs. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. Okay, I'm not trying to say I'm the best officer ever. All I'm trying to say is, when we wear this uniform, and Derek, you're the same way. Um, you have a responsibility when something happens in front of your eyes. You ethically have to call it out, one way or the other. It's right or it's wrong. And if there's a gray area, then you work that out too. But those are things that officers do daily, and there's a lot of good officers that do it. And there's a lot of officers down there that agree with me, okay, that do not want that kind of behavior in that jail. They know it puts them in danger because, after a while, you get prisoners to a point where they're so unhappy and they feel so threatened and they feel beat up and they feel disrespected and they feel underfed, and all of those things start to happen. Well, that's exactly how you get you know, the things that happen in a jail. That's where your riots come from. That's where your uprisings begin, and you've got to pay attention to that. And that's what I did. I paid close attention to that. Those people, the 1,400 prisoners that were in that jail, I've always felt when I went home at the end of the day, they're in my care and custody, and I'm going to take care of them regardless of who they are or what they did. That's not my job. My job isn't to judge. My job isn't to punish. My job is care and custody.
Right, right. And I want to be very clear on that. And that is very well put. You're much more eloquent than I am with that with that stuff, which is why you're running for sheriff. Uh, having said that, sometimes people say, "Well, Bauman, you're rough on the cops, or this or that." No, I want to be very clear about that. We support the police. I firmly believe that this position of calling out wrongdoing is the pro police position. I use the
Mm-hmm.
example of Tommy Norman. He's got over 1 million followers on Instagram because he's doing stuff in the neighborhood with the kids every day, and they absolutely love him in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And he's a model across the country. And
Yep.
Tommy Norman's the safest cop in the country. Anybody try to do anything to Tommy Norman, and there would be hell to pay. The cops wouldn't even have to come out there. And
Right.
so if we have that attitude and you establish that rapport and trust and you know that rapport, trust, transparency in the community, they support you. And then if something happens that, well, it could have been this or it could have been that. No, I've been working with Charmaine. I've been working with Derek for a long time. If they're telling me that,
Right.
I trust and believe what they're telling me. So you're probably coming up with some nonsense right now. And so the people will have your back. And you know, not all the time you'll have some craziness, but generally speaking, do you agree with that general philosophy?
Oh, I absolutely do. I celebrate police officers. I celebrate what they do, but I also call it out when it's wrong, right? And there's a number of police officers that do that. We call it out when it's wrong, and there have been times when we got it wrong, when officers got it wrong, and people tried to sweep it under the rug, and that's exactly what we have to do here. We got to peel back the onion. We got to peel back all the layers, and we have to be transparent. Transparency comes at a price, right? Because then people see that you have made mistakes, that you do have vulnerabilities, that certain things happen that maybe you wouldn't like to have the public know about. And there are things in a police agency, this, that we have to keep close to the vest regarding investigations and things, because we have to make sure we have the right outcomes. But in general, there isn't any reason why we should not be completely transparent with everyone who wants to know exactly what we're doing, why we did it, and can't they come and find out, and they should be able to find out.
Right. And that's fantastic. And I think that's one of the things that people ask for in human endeavors. I don't think people necessarily expect perfection.
Right.
But you know what? And if we screw up, we screwed up.
That's right.
Our pal, we need to look at the policy on that.
Yeah.
It hadn't really happened like this before, and so now we need to adjust. And I think that's one of the keys from today and last night when we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
That all of this stuff shouldn't have happened. I think the key at this point is you use that as a learning experience, right? So will there
Right.
be or would you have, or will there be, or would you have, like a debriefing and say,
Oh,
okay, what's the game plan for next time so that this shit show doesn't turn out like that? Yeah, we screwed up. We could
absolutely.
have planned better. What could we do better next time?
Oh yeah, we had some guys out at Road Patrol, some supervisors out there that came up with after action plans, and they've been doing those after action reports, and they're quite good. We all go out, we sit, we look at an incident, they put it up on the big screen, they analyze it from all different angles, and it's super helpful to all of us. And the officers want that, so they will have an after action report, I hope, about this situation, so that they can evaluate what went wrong and what went well. And I hope to God they fix that jail piece. Jesus. And I have to just say it that way. It's too simple to screw up that way. I
Right.
mean, when you talk about basic decency, that's what I mean when I say simple. The basic decency of how we're gonna incarcerate people and make sure their basic needs, water, food, which by the way, food starts being served in that jail on third shift. The third shift officers go down and get it, right? So I don't know why these people weren't fed. They should have been. If they weren't, they should have been. We certainly start feeding early in the morning.
Right.
So, those are things that I think about, things that I'm going to work on and make sure that we are accountable for moving forward.
That is good stuff. This has been an amazing conversation and a very timely one as well. Folks, I'm doing this on, I think, Tuesdays and Thursdays now mostly, but if we have special things going on like this weekend and still happening out here tonight, hopefully everybody ends up safe. We've heard that some tear gas has been deployed perhaps, and so we'll see what transpires tonight, but we certainly hope for the best. We want everybody to be safe and still keep everyone's rights intact, and people absolutely have a right to be upset with some of the things that have gone on, clearly. So with that being said, any other closing remarks, Charmaine? Let me I want you to tell everybody what your website, actually I have it up right now.
Sure.
McGuffy for Sheriff, McGuffyforSheriff.com. Go on there. This
Right.
doesn't happen. We know the Republican opponent gets mega funding from people that don't know. They just write big fat checks, and you're
Yes,
out to the people with the 20 and the 50 and $100. How
that's
can
right.
they get engaged and help? Because this is we're talking about law enforcement, but it's a political campaign. How can people help?
That's right. People can help me by sharing my stories, sharing Facebook posts, like my page, get my message out there. Please talk to your friends and family, and anybody that wants to approach me or talk to me, please contact us from that web page and say, "Hey, I want to put on a Zoom for my community. I want to put on a Zoom for my neighborhood." Whatever it is, if there's someone who wants to know about me or know about this campaign, we are ready and willing to go. We work more than 12 hours a day, sometimes 16. So the other thing I'd like people to do is please consider donating to my campaign. My opponent has a large amount of money. He didn't have to spend any money on a primary. He didn't have an opponent. I did. And I had to do what the right thing was, which was spend all of my money. I spent $160,000 to defeat Jim Neal with a 70% vote. And now I have to build up those funds because I absolutely need to be the next sheriff. I can do the job. I'm passionate about it. I'm good at it. I have the experience. And I promise you, nobody's going to have the public in mind more than me as the sheriff of Hamilton County.
Well, that's excellent closing words. I told everybody this morning when I was live out there that I was confident in having endorsed and supported you from the beginning. That this would
Thank you.
I would not have been standing out there and doing all that if we had Charmaine McGuffy as sheriff out there. I just wouldn't have been there because it would have been handled. I'm very confident in saying that. I feel like your opponent is kind of just a more of the same from the same kind of thread line of doing things in the old school way. And so, everybody, please go on the website to support her. Tomorrow night, along these same veins, I'm weaving this theme in there about our entire criminal justice system. And tomorrow we're going to have Fanon Rucker on, who Fanon has been out there. I ran into him Friday night. He was out,
Yep.
got the helicopter,
He was out there.
tear gas,
Yep.
balls are going like this. And Fanon Rucker was out there. I saw him out there again today, so that's fantastic. He's somebody else that's very connected to the people out on the streets as you are. And then, we've had a number of our judicial candidates on as well. But this is an overarching theme. It's not just the sheriff's department. It's the prosecutor's office as well. It's been controlled by the old school Republican law and order, lock them up, throw away the key mindset, and we know that's not the best way.
Right.
So we're gonna have Fanon on tomorrow night, and then we'll see what happens. So with that, with that, somebody's yelling at me on here because I get going on my soapbox and I start channeling Rev Ron, my dad, the fire and brimstone up there in the pulpit, and I get fired up. So I apologize. I'm not George Stephanopoulos, people. You're getting your money's worth. This is free. So you're getting your absolute worth on this. But anyway, these are amazing conversations to have. We've had a great crowd here the whole time. And so
thank you.
Probably going to be the biggest video yet. I will also upload this to YouTube. Search for me on there and do a subscribe. You can see how bad the production was that you think is bad now. You should have seen it before. But a great message. Charmaine was another great viewer, another guest from across the city of Cincinnati. Derek Bauman on that, at Derek Bauman, Instagram, Twitter, Charmaine McGuffy with all of her social media. Get on there, and everybody, when you get done, we've got 57 people still hanging in there. As soon as you get done, even if it's $5 or $10, whatever you can do. We know it's a recession, depression. 45 is drop the ball. But if you can scrounge something up, drop it on Charmaine's campaign. This is very important. She started from scratch over again. So with that being said, Charmaine, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Special
thank
edition.
you, Derek.
And
thank
we'll
you,
talk to y'all soon. All right.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. You too. Bye.